Welcome to the Search Bar, where we make SEO as approachable as a great glass of wine. I'm your host, Eric Ritter, the SEO sommelier, and today we're uncorking an emergency bottle, what to do when your SEO traffic suddenly drops. By the end of this episode, you'll know how to confirm if your traffic drop is a real issue or just a natural fluctuation, the most common causes behind SEO drops, technical, content, and external factors, and a step-by-step recovery plan to get your traffic flowing again. So let's get into it. I'm super excited, as you can tell. So think of this as your emergency response guide, because just like finding a corked wine in your cellar, a traffic drop can ruin your day, but don't panic. I'll guide you through the recovery process. And we're not going to get super technical today, so if you have any technical questions, just drop me a line, or if this turns out to be popular, we'll just do a follow-up episode. So just like a wine, you're going to have that first look here where you're going to identify the issue. So first, let's examine what we're dealing with. Just like we'd inspect a wine's clarity, you need to validate if there's really a problem. So what you need is to use your tools you have available. That's Google Analytics and Google Search Console. And if this is truly a significant drop, then you know it's a big deal and not just a normal daily fluctuation. So what are you looking for? What are those indicators? So first of all, always look year over year, not week over week or month over month, because you want to account for seasonality, because there could be holidays happening. There could be a spike when people really use your services and then they don't need it anymore. So always compare that data year over year. Then check if the drop is site-wide or just specific pages. So look in your analytics and your search console and see if it's holistically on the website, you got a big drop, or if it's just one or two landing pages, and then you can start figuring out if it really is a big deal or just some normal fluctuations. Also, verify your site is still properly indexed in Google. So check Search Console and make sure your sites and your page are still properly indexed in there. Also, review mobile versus desktop traffic separately, because that could be an indicator that something's maybe technically wrong with the website, that your traffic on mobile is down, but desktop, it's still good to go. So think of this step like inspecting a wine's clarity before taking that first sip. You want to ensure you're seeing the full picture before jumping to conclusions. Next up is you want to check the nose of the wine, right? So how it smells. And that's diagnosing the problem. So now that we know there is really an issue, it's not just seasonality, it's not just normal fluctuations, you want to start that diagnostic process. So that's like picking up the subtle notes in a complex wine. You need to understand and identify those underlying causes. So let's go through them step by step. Number one, start by running through SEO diagnostic checks. So those are manual actions. In Google Search Console, you get a notification if there's penalties. Maybe someone hacked your website and it's full of spam or something like that, that can then tell you, oh, it's actually Google giving me a manual action. That's like getting a really bad review from a top wine critic on your website. So that's where you always want to start. Maybe your wine isn't selling and then you realize, oh, someone gave me a really, really bad review. Same thing here on the website is Google gave me a manual action. Next up is looking at the indexing and robots tags. So make sure your robots.txt file and meta robots tags aren't blocking important pages. This is even in WordPress, this can be an issue because there's a little checkbox for you to make sure that you're not discouraging search engines from crawling your website. I've seen that so many times when a new website launches, the developer or whoever's in charge forgets to uncheck that box. And because of that, your website doesn't get indexed. It's not getting indexed. Google's not going to crawl. It's not going to index it. You're not going to come up into search results and you're not going to have any traffic. Next thing you want to look at is your server. Are there any server response codes? So a 404 error means that a page isn't found, or you could have 500 errors where the server isn't being found, or like slow loading speeds. Because this is like checking if your wine bottles are properly stored, right? You want to have the right temperature. You want to have it sideways so the cork doesn't dry out, right? You want to make sure that all the technical items are in good shape. Next up on the checklist are recent changes. And that's always honestly one of the best places to start is to see if there was any recent updates to content. Did you redesign the website? Did you change URLs? Because even small adjustments can impact rankings. So let's talk about WordPress. In WordPress, that means, did you add any plugins to the website? Because plugins can interact or counteract maybe with other plugins and can break your website, can make it not work anymore. And then you're not going to be able to get the traffic that you did previously. So always check those plugins, start turning some off to see if that helps your website there. Because that's one of the culprits can be that plugin, and that's a recent change. And now the one that everybody knows about, everybody hears about, but I always like to check it last, which are algorithm updates. The famous algorithm updates from Google. Every couple months, Google announces, hey, we made an algorithm update. So you want to review SEO news sources such as Marie Haynes, shout out to Marie, who does a really good job going over those core updates that can affect rankings. And she even tells you exactly what to look for and potentially how to even recover from it. So on the nose here, you really think of it as aerating your SEO strategy, right? Letting that data breathe, you look at it so you can detect exactly what's gone wrong. All right, next up is understanding the root causes or what the wine feels like on the palate. So it's time for that taste test to the most common causes behind an SEO traffic drop. And more importantly, how to fix them. So let's dive into the most common cause of traffic drops and their solutions. Like understanding different wine faults, knowing these patterns can help respond effectively. So there's 3 areas there. We're starting off with technical issues. So there could be accidental no index, no follow tags. That's like accidentally putting the cork in backwards, right, into the wine bottle. I already mentioned on WordPress, there's a little box that you can check to discourage search engines from indexing the website. So look for things like that. Look in the code to see if certain pages or even the entire website has no index tags on it. Next up are server problems. So that's similar to improper wine storage conditions. We talked about that earlier. Your server could be having some hiccups, right? You could be on a GoDaddy server where you're sharing that server space with a bunch of other websites. One website could have exploded, right? Has a bunch of traffic, and now the resources aren't available to load the other websites on there. So you could be having server problems. So check into that. Next up are HTTPS or SSL certificate expiration. So I've seen that personally before, where you try to go to a website and Chrome, Safari, whatever the browser is, warns you and says, hey, this website is not safe. And that's because the SSL certificate expired, right? So you want to make sure that your SSL certificate is always up to date, because that's that wine authentication seal on there saying, hey, this is authentic from this region, or hey, this website is good to go. It's safe. You can visit it. Finally, on the technical issues, you want to look at the XML sitemap errors. So that's comparable to having an outdated wine list, right? Nothing's worse than going to a restaurant. You're really looking forward to that nice Sauvignon Blanc to have with your chicken maybe, and then that wine list is outdated. They don't have the one that you wanted there. And so making sure that the XML sitemap doesn't have any errors, because then you're telling the search engine the incorrect things. They're not able to understand what your website is all about. The next area are content issues. So content issues a lot of times can be really difficult to diagnose, but one area to start with there are core updates impact. So that's like changes in the wine scoring system, right? Where all of a sudden they're saying, hey, we care much more about XYZ instead of ABC. So look at the Google core algorithm updates. A really famous core update several years ago was the caffeine update. What does caffeine do? It speeds you up, right? Gets you through the day. Same thing in Google is they're now saying, hey, we want websites that load quickly. If they don't load fast enough, we're going to penalize you. So that's one thing to look at to see if there's any specific indications from core updates. You also want to look at the quality of that content, right? So making sure as your wine ages that it's aging properly, right? Each wine has a certain drinking window. And so you want to make sure that it's aging properly so it's good for that drinking window. Same thing with your content. It could have aged poorly, right? So you're giving incorrect advice, you're giving outdated advice, and that's going to hurt you. So you need to do an assessment of your content and making sure that the quality is still there, it's still factually correct, and everything's good to go. Next up are the EAT signals. So that's kind of the wine's reputation, right? So is this content on your website really trustworthy? Is it something that's built on expertise, something that's authentic, or is this just spammy content that was written by a layman about maybe some kind of health condition? You want to read a health condition about someone who knows what they're talking about, a scientist, a doctor. So making sure that your content really has that gravitas behind it. Now, finally, on the content side, let's talk about competing content. So there could be new wines entering the market, right? And all of a sudden your wine that was at the top isn't as good anymore. Same thing on your website, right? Your content that was great for a decade. I hear that all the time. Like, hey, I've been ranking at the top for 10 years. All of a sudden you slowly start getting pushed down. And that's because there's new websites, new content entering the website. That's why SEO is an ongoing project. You can't just put your content out there and hope it's good forever. You need to make sure that it isn't stale, that you're adding new content to it. That's why a lot of times you'll see blog posts or articles have the year in them. So that way it's more trustworthy, like, oh, this is 2025 best practices, not 2019, which is irrelevant now. So going back and updating content to make sure that it stays competitive is really important. The final fact you want to look at are those external factors. So external factors are things you can't always directly control, right? It's not the technical foundation of your website. It's not the content, but those could be things such as backlink losses, right? So maybe you were listed in an important directory. That important directory dropped you because you lost that verification from them. And let's talk about wine, right? That's like losing a prestigious restaurant placement. And all of a sudden, boom, you're not listed in that restaurant anymore. Here in Tampa, maybe you were in Burns. All of a sudden, Burns doesn't carry you anymore. Now you've lost all that prestige. And that's the same thing like losing a powerful backlink on the website. Talked about competitors on content, also goes for backlinks. Other wineries might be stepping up their game, right? Getting their certifications, getting listed in restaurants. Same thing. SEO is ongoing, not just from a content standpoint, but also the external factors, those backlinks, right? Making sure that you're in those important directories. There might be, if you're a law firm, there might be a new legal directory. All the other law firms are in there, but you're not. That's a signal to Google that you're not a credible law firm because you're not listed where everyone else is. Just like with content, got to look at the algorithm updates, right? Is there changes in critic preferences? All of a sudden, everybody loves rosés. They don't want red anymore. Is that the same thing from Google saying, hey, we really care about getting links from local websites, local directories. So you need to make sure that you're listed there, not just in the big directories, but also in those local directories. So now let's talk about the finish, right? One of my favorite parts in the wine. How does it finish? How does it go down? Here, we're going to talk about that recovery plan, right? So it's time for that game plan because just like decanting a fine wine, SEO recovery takes time. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So I'm going to have 5 steps for you guys here on how to recover if your traffic has fallen from the search engines. So step 1, most importantly, document everything. You want to make sure that you're keeping track of the Google updates, site changes, analytics trends, so you can correlate drops with possible causes, right? So every month you should look, how much traffic am I getting? What pages are coming up for what queries? Maybe even if you're tracking rankings, how are my rankings doing? And don't just look month over month, not even year over year. Look maybe back 2 years, 3 years, see if there are trends going one direction or the other, and do those correlate with any updates from Google. Next up is step 2, prioritize fixes by impact. So you don't want to just do what's quick, what's easy. You want to do what's going to actually move the needle, what's going to help your website. So that starts off by addressing critical technical issues first. So making sure if your website's not indexed, that's the first thing you need to look at. If your site is slow, you need to speed it up. If you're having server errors, right? We talked about those earlier. You need to make sure those are getting fixed. There's the 404 errors, the 500 errors on the website. Then after all the technical foundation is there, right? Because once Google can crawl your website, you're giving it the opportunity to index you, which is great. And once you're indexed on Google, you want to make sure that those pages have good content on them. So then we're tackling that content through good optimization. That's going back and updating old pages that maybe used to perform, aren't performing anymore. improving the EEAT, right? So making sure that you're authoritative and trustworthy, and boosting those internal links. So internal links are a way to help Google understand what's important on your website. Are my service pages important? Are my product pages important? Are whatever page is most important, or are my blogs important? One way to help Google understand what's important on your website is by having links from one page to another. So a mistake I see often is that people, every page they have in the copy, in the text, in a blog post, they have a link back to the Contact Us page, which makes sense from a call to action standpoint. But let's say you put the keyword in there, if you're an attorney, like contact your personal injury attorney, best personal injury attorney, and that goes to your Contact Us page, you're telling Google that I want the contact page to be the most important page on the website when someone's searching for a personal injury attorney. So don't make that mistake. Either don't link to your Contact Us page because people are going to find it some other way, or use a different anchor text in there when you're working on those internal links. So step 3 now, creating a timeline. Some fixes show immediate results, while others can take weeks. So you need to set realistic expectations and monitor changes gradually. That's why step 1 is documenting everything over time, so you then can create a timeline to figure out what to fix when. Because there might be other teams, other resources, other people involved, whether that's a technical team, the development team, the design team. All of those teams need to make sure that they're pulling on the same string. Step 4 is monitor and adjust. We talked about having Google Analytics, Google Search Console, really important for monitoring in here. So you need to have weekly adjustments and weekly monitoring to track that recovery process, because it's not going to go from today to tomorrow. You need to keep an eye on it and see what's happening in Search Console, what's happening in Analytics. And also keep an eye on competitors and backlinks and adjust your strategy as needed. And that's part of ongoing SEO work, right? Is always looking at the competitors, because the dirty secret to SEO is you don't have to be the best. The secret is you just need to be better than your competitors. You have to have better backlinks, better content, better user experience, and that's how you come up number 1. You don't need to be the best website in the world, just better than your competitors. Step 5, important, keep everybody informed. Keep that communication open, keep those communication lines open, so keep stakeholders informed. So if you're working with a team, as I mentioned, communicate what's happening and what's being done. Maybe you have a spreadsheet, maybe you have project management software, so everybody has clear expectations on when they'll see improvements and what they need to do. And I can't emphasize this enough. Remember, SEO isn't a sprint, it's a marathon, but with the right strategy, you'll see traffic start flowing again, just like well-aged wine when it reaches its peak. I really hope this episode helped you prepare for and handle those dreaded traffic drops. When I'm not out doing SEO sommelier things, I'm the founder and CEO of Digital Neighbor, your friendly SEO agency. So if you're facing an SEO challenge or just want to learn more about growing your digital presence, head over to Digital Neighbor. Thank you so much for listening. And before you head out, I wanted to give you my recommendation for wine for this episode. Since we're talking about emergency wine, my go-to is always a nice Riesling from the Rheingau region in Germany, in particular from Schloss Johannisberg. I'm going to put it in the show notes so you don't have to remember it, but I really recommend maybe a good Gelblatt Riesling. And remember, great SEO, like fine wine, only gets better with the right attention. Cheers, and I'll see you next time on the search bar.